Hey guys, how's it going? F8 Alpha here and welcome back to the channel. Today we are back in World of Tanks and we're having a look at another addition to the premium shop, or what you can pick up right now in the premium shop. We're having a look at the AMX M4 MLE49, or the Liberte as it's known. Now there are some bundles in the premium shop. There's 5 bundles actually you can choose from. There's 2 with the Liberte paint, the French flag paint on the tank, and those are $65.99 and $82.99. Now they do come with equipment and gold and credits and whatnot, but I think what I would draw your attention to maybe a little bit more would be the unpainted or uncamoed version of the tank, as there are 3 bundles with that. You have the standard bundle, which is $51.99, you have the loaded bundle, which is $67.99, and you have the ultimate bundle, which is $84.99. Now, what exactly are you getting for your money if you were to pick up this tank? Well, that's what we're going to look at here. I went ahead and I set up a comparison so we can see what the Liberte, or AMX, is all about. For this comparison, I will be comparing the AMX to the low and to the T-34, as all these tanks are available at this very moment in the premium shop. They're all tier 8 heavy tanks. So let's get right into it here. Let's start off with firepower. Now the DPM goes to the AMX. It has 1,822. The low has 1,668, which is also the same as the T-34. The penetration of the AMX is 232. The low has 234. And the T-34 has 248. So obviously the T-34 has a bit more penetration on it. But let's look at the damage. Let's look at the alpha damage on each one of these tanks. Now, the AMX has a 100 millimeter, the low has a 105, and the T-34 has a 120 millimeter. So what this means is that the AMX has 300 alpha damage per shot, the low has 320, and the T-34 has 400 alpha damage per shot. But let's look at the rate of fire, as that will give us a better picture of what this tank is about. The AMX can fire 6 rounds per minute. The low can fire 5.2, and the the T-34 can fire 4.1. Now, one thing to note is that the shell velocity, so how much you really have to lead your target, is very good on the AMX. It's 1,000. The low is a little bit better at 1,150, but the T-34 kind of struggles at 940. Now, by no means is that derpy, but at the same time, to have that 1,000 meter shell velocity is great for lining up a shot, especially on fast moving targets. Now let's go ahead and look at aim times. The AMX has an aim time of 2.7, the low has an aim time of 2.7, and the T-34 has an aim time of 3.0, meaning that the low and the AMX have the best aim time in this comparison. But aim time doesn't matter a whole lot if you can't hit your shots, if you're not accurate. So let's go ahead and look at dispersion and accuracy. The AMX has 0.35, the low has 0.32, and the T-34 has 0.34. Now, 0.35 is kind of the standard. That is kind of the middle ground for most tier 7, tier 8, tier 9 tanks. Obviously, there's better, there's worse, but that is kind of the middle of the road when it comes to aim time. So the AMX is right on par. Obviously, the low is the best, and the T-34 is in the middle. Let's go ahead and move into mobility. Now, forward speeds of these tanks, the AMX can travel at 40 kilometers forward, the low can travel at 35 kilometers forward, as well as the T-34. So the low and the T-34 are both tied at 35 kilometers an hour. Now let's go ahead and look at the weight of these tanks. The AMX weighs 70 tons. The low weighs 90 tons, and the T-34 weighs 65 tons. But what really matters is the engine power and what is propelling these tanks forward. So let's go ahead and look at the power to weight ratio. The AMX has a power to weight ratio of 14.2. The low is 11.1. and the T-34 is 12.4, meaning that the AMX has that extra bit of power, that extra horsepower to climb those hills faster or to get to your position that much faster. It also has a better top speed, making it a bit more mobile as far as the tanks in this comparison are concerned. Another thing to note is that the AMX has the best turret traverse and the best hull traverse. The turret traverse is 29.2 and the hull traverse is 26.0. The T-34 and the low simply cannot match these numbers, making the AMX a far more mobile tank in this comparison. Now we're going to move forward to the highlight of this tank, what this tank is known for and why you should be picking up this tank, the armor. The armor of the AMX is 190 millimeters on the front, 55 on the side, and 40 at the rear. This is on the hull. The turret is 250 on the front, 120 on the sides, and 60 at the rear. So what this means is that this is your traditional heavy tank. This is not a side scraper. This is a hull forward, turret forward, towards your enemy type of tank. This is a stand in front of your enemies, angle your tank slightly, and duke it out with them. And having that 232 millimeters of penetration will aid you in penetrating some of the thicker armor. Not to mention the premium shields, which have 263 millimeters of penetration, giving you that extra bit of penetration when it comes to those tier 10 heavies. Now the low has 150 at the front of the hull, 100 at the side, and 80 at the rear. The turret is 120, 80 at the side, and 80 at the rear, meaning that the low is far better when it comes to side scraping. Also, the low is very, very angled as far as the turret goes. It has a very big gun mantlet on it, making it a pretty substantial, pretty decent hull down tank with that angled turret. Now let's go ahead and move forward to the T-34. It has 102 millimeters of frontal hull armor, 76 at the sides, and 51 at the rear. It has 279 millimeters of frontal turret armor, 127 at the sides, and 203 at the rear, meaning obviously the T-34 is the best hull down tank, or one of the best hull down tanks that you can get in Tier 8. Let's move forward to hit points. The AMX has 1500, the T-34 has 1500, and the low has 1655, meaning that the low has the most hit points. However, the armor on the AMX is more than substantial and more than capable of bouncing Tier 8s, Tier 9s, and even Tier 10s if you're angled properly. Now reverting back to the armor, because that's what this tank is known for, and I really wanted to showcase the armor and highlight it. The armor is 190 millimeters at the upper glacis. However, it is angled at a 32-degree slope, meaning that the effective armor is from 225 to 240. Now, if you're angled, obviously that increases. Also, the cheeks of the hull are 150 millimeters thick. However, they're angled at 60 degrees, meaning that their effective armor is about 280, 290, making them almost a auto ricochet for most tanks. Now the lower plate, the lower glacis, is 120 millimeters thick. However, it is very well angled, and it's about 260 to 280 millimeters thick, unless you're just flat out giving them your bottom glacis there if they're aiming up at you or something like that. The turret, as I mentioned earlier, is 250 millimeters thick, and it has a kind of an odd shape to the front of it, meaning that there is tons and tons of area for most tanks, even tier 10s, to auto ricochet off. Now with that said, the weak point, if you're trying to engage in AMX from the front, the weak point that you should be firing at is the commander's cupola, as it is 60 millimeters thick, and you will more than likely penetrate with everything that you fire at this. Tier 6s can penetrate this with no problem. So, with that said, what that means is to keep your turret moving, keep your tank maybe jostling back and forth. Try and make those shots into your cupola that much harder. Now the side of this tank, like I said, is 55 millimeters thick. This is not a side scraping tank. This is a hull forward angled tank. So this tank will be penetrated fairly easily by most things that shoot this in the side. Even if you're angled, the armor is not substantial or thick enough to ricochet very many rounds. Now, as far as equipment goes on this tank, I would recommend stabilizers, I would recommend vents, and I would recommend a gun rammer. Also, this will increase your DPM, this will decrease your aim time, this will help out your accuracy. Also, it'll help out your mobility just a bit. Now, as far as crew skills go, I would run the traditional heavy tank loadout. So what that means is you can run repairs for your first skill, and then go ahead and transition over to, for the commander, Sixth Sense for the gunner, Snapshot for the driver, maybe off-road driving, or clutch braking. For the radio man, I would probably go with situational awareness after you have repairs. And for the loader, of course, go with safe stowage. My final thoughts on this tank. This tank is a fantastic heavy tank. This tank is probably one of my favorite tier 8 heavy tanks to play. It is very strong. You can directly compete with tier 9s if you angle properly. Tier 8s, unless they're firing premium rounds, you are going to struggle massively to get through your frontal armor. However, with that said, if you do get flanked, your armor will not hold up. The armor is very thin on the sides and back. So keep this tank aimed forward. This tank is a great crew trainer, experience earner, and credit grinder. So I would highly recommend picking up this tank. And with that said, guys, that's my review of the AMX. I am F8 Alpha, and I will catch you guys next time.